Incremental ratings. That is the sixth section of the Pleasurable Guide to SuperMemo, the Fluency cycle, and it's about element parameters and operations. The contents of this section will be as follows. First, the parameters. We'll introduce first the folders, which is something qualitatively, it's not the element type. The root element has its own properties, and then properly the parameters dialog, where you can check the parameters, not the only way, and then a few parameters. The background, title, and so on, the behavior of the titles, in quite a lot of detail. So you understand the behavior of titles, it's rather important in the long term. And then the operations, these missing elements, the use cases, considerations, understanding the same operation from different contexts, forgetting, remembering. And then remember that we have seen the stats before, of pending, memorized, and so on. So we will understand this from the stats window. So now we will be able to understand some of the stats. We're going to cover this incrementally, and not all of them anyways. Finally, element conversions, that you can change each type, duplicating, and that's about it. There's quite a lot more that we can do, but for the fluency, that is all you need. So at the end of the video, at the end of the section in this video, you'll be able to know and use all of this in SuperMemo. Let's start. So we have seen all of the element types, topics, items, concepts, and tasks. But there's, let's say, another element type that is qualitative. It's a kind of a topic, and it's called folder. What is a folder? Easy. So in this case, do you see flat or slides? That's a topic, and if you remember, it's yellow. That means it's dismissed. It doesn't take part on the learning process. Nice. So the definition of a folder is more or less the same as the files in Windows. You have folders and files in Windows, right? Same thing. So you can expand, and I can have more elements. Those elements can be, again, in this case, another folder, and even more folders, and topics, and so on. Nice. Then, the one nuisance of the definition is that it's a topic, yes, it's dismissed, yes, but has hierarchy, has children. Therefore, convention, it's a folder. Ideas for auto hotkey, that's not a folder. Why? Because it's childless. There's no hierarchy down. So this is just a dismissed topic, and this is a folder. Even though, strictly speaking, it's the same, it's a dismissed topic in reality, as a user, we have this difference because this is how you treat SuperMemo for incremental reading qualitatively, that hey, this is acting as a folder. Because something we will see later on with the flow of incremental reading, you will have folders. If I go, let's say, to education, that was a source. I imported an article, and this was what's called an extract, and then I have the flashcard. And then, once you're done, you will have either items and folders. The folders that contain the items and so on. We're not going to invest time here because, again, we'll cover this in detail later. It's just to let you know that it's something that you really want, to have folders and to make this distinction. Or it's something I dismissed for whatever reason. I want to keep this, but I don't want to be on the repetitions, and that's it. Or no, it's a folder because it contains stuff I want, especially items. That's why if we go to right-click and new, then you have folder. You can create folders right away. That is basically the same as a topic. It's just dismissed, and it's meant for this flow. So now that we know what are elements, in SuperMemo, for every collection is what's called the root element. What is the root element? The top, the very first element. In my case, it's called Pleasurable learning. Then there are some requisites. It has to exist. So when you create a brand new collection in SuperMemo, they will have already one element, and it will be the root element. Second, it has to be a concept. So the element type requires to be a concept. That is because of incremental reading. So in case you don't want to use concepts, you can neglect them. That doesn't mean you don't have concepts. That means that you will have only the root in this case. You cannot have no concepts at all in SuperMemo. That's the only reason it's a concept. So you can have as many as deep hierarchy as you want, but always there's the starting point, and there's can only be one. In this sense, you cannot have a sibling here that comes from the master. It's always will be a child of the root. So this, which by the way you can rename, by default will have the same name as the collection, but it's not required. You can change it because it's an element. This is what is called the root element. So from now on, every time that I say the root or the root element, I do refer to this, regardless of the name or the status. By default, it's dismissed, it's yellow, but it doesn't require, meaning that if I really want to, I can memorize it. And you see now it's orange, so a concept that is orange means it's memorized. So the status, by default, is dismissed, can be modified. The element, its concept, can be modified if you really want to, but SuperMemo will not allow you or reconvert it back to a concept anyways. Don't mess with this. Leave it as a concept. It's time to introduce the element parameters. Every single element in SuperMemo, regardless of its type, it will have parameters. Then some element types have more parameters. For instance, items, which are flashcards, they have a lot more parameters because of space repetition. And tasks also have more parameters, as we will see, because of the task management. So in SuperMemo, everything is scheduled. Unless it's dismissed, it will be scheduled, meaning it has an interval. Everything in SuperMemo has a priority, unless it's dismissed, that the priority is like frozen at some degree. So those are attributes. I like properties. So the parameters are attributes, properties. Since every single element is in the knowledge tree, every single element also have a title, its name, regardless of the content. So those are already some hints that there are some properties, parameters, that are common, shared across the element types, and some others are unique to one specific element type. Then we're going to see just a few that are more relevant now, and other element parameters when is required. Some of them will only be covered on the mastery track because are obscure. So remember, this is not a parameter. This is a component, like the image is a component. Everything that exists about the element is an element parameter. So it's time to introduce a new window we haven't seen so far. And it's called the element parameters window. Ctrl-Shift-P, P for parameters. And you have this dialog. It's meant just to be temporary. You cannot do the repetitions while this is open. If I try, I will get this sound. I cannot click on learn. Awesome. So here, as the title says, I have some parameters. The title, interval, the repetition, priority, we'll see all of this. We have also the element type here, some combo box, and some other buttons that trigger other dialogues and more windows still. We're going to see these one by one. Only the basics, only the ones you require for the fluency, and the rest in the mastery. Because here, some parameters are a lot more convenient, and some other parameters are quite obscure. And if you don't know, if you don't see them on the fluency, it's because they are not relevant, or you shouldn't care, or they have diminishing returns, that the time you will invest to learn about them versus the applicability you will get, it is not worth it. So remember, on the videos, whenever we say element parameters, it's about this. By the way, there are more parameters that are not in this window, by the way. But this is, element parameters window. Ctrl-Shift-P of the element you have. In my case, it's the root. Or you can also use the menu. If you're not familiar with the key bindings, right-click in the element, then Edit, and the first option, Element Parameters. Same thing. Nice. We're going to introduce the element number in SuperMemo. In the element parameter dialog, we have this. Topic 406,538. That is the element number. There's no field for that. We have the ordinal or a staff, but for whatever reason, the element number is displayed only on the caption of the window. Then you can also find it on the element data window. Interestingly, on the element data window, this one also appears in the caption, but it doesn't appear as a field either. So this is already telling you a lot that there are a lot of parameters here and it is still not there. So that is already telling you how relevant it is. So basically, not that relevant. And you can also see it in the browser window. We have some columns. And one of the columns is this, no, element number. You can see it here. So then what it is a unique sequential identifier. It is like in a database, you have a unique identifier. The same thing. Every element in SuperMemo has an identifier. It's unique in the sense that no other element in the collection will have the same number, unlike the ordinal. That doesn't mean it's not reused. And yes, in SuperMemo, for whatever reason, the element numbers can be reused. We'll see that in another video. So basically, it's the physical position. It's static and permanent. So once it is assigned, the element number cannot change. What can change is the element which will have this element number, because it can be reused. But if this is the 406,538, it will always be this one, unless I delete this element, and eventually in the future it will be reused, and a different element will have this number. It's just to go straight to the point and distinguish the element number to the ordinal number in SuperMemo. The key differences. We have purpose, the nature, default usage, impact on the learning process, and the user control over that setting. So the ordinal number, the purpose is to identify it in the position in a database. So something that is more for the computer, not for the user. And the ordinal number is for the user to have a logical learning sequence. That, I want, when I share this with someone else, not for me, that the people see this order, not necessarily the one that is present in the collection. What's the nature of an element number? It's a static, permanent, and a database ID. Unlike the ordinal number that the user can set, can modify, therefore is dynamic, doesn't have to be unique. So even if you want, you can have your entire collection with the same number, and it's a sequence controller. It's about it. So the actual number is not relevant. What's relevant is the sequence of numbers. So if it's 10 or 10,010, it doesn't tell me much unless I see the other elements. If everything is in the 10,000s, it will make more sense. Then, default usage. For the element number, it's just linking, systems operation, something internal. The user can actually do this explicitly in SuperMemo, but are arcane features already. But some people do that. And the ordinal number is just to set a custom order for commercial collections like SuperMemo has, or in the very, very obscure case that you do this your own. In my case, I will do it for the very first time myself when I share my collection for the paid extras of this course. So other than that, there's no use case. What's the impact on learning for the element number? None. It's indirect. The SuperMemo uses this systematically. It's not user controlled, so none. And the ordinal number, the effect on the learning is direct, because this already impacts the order I will get exposed to elements from the pending queue. Imagine more or less an Anki shared deck that is meant with order, let's say like the +1 in language learning. I get the easy sentences, and every time the sentence only adds one new word or one new grammar rule. And if it goes arbitrary, it will be a lot harder, right? That's a big impact in the learning. And once you have exposed to everything, then it becomes irrelevant, the ordinal. It's only during the process of learning. And user control, as we have already hinted, the element number, you have no control. It's set by the user, it's set by the system. Even when it's reused, you don't decide if it's going to be reused or not, or it will be a brand new. And the ordinal number is user modifiable. Among other things, among other places, you can do it as easy as going to Ctrl+Shift+P, the element parameter dialog, or with the browser, if you want to do it in batch. So as you now have noticed, even though the element number and the ordinal number look like about the same thing, because it's something I never pay attention to, now you have realized that, okay, they're quite distinct. Should you care about this distinction? Well, I don't know. At the very least, now you know why you don't have to pay attention to that, which is already a kind of a golden nugget, because then you will never know if that will be useful or not, and you're missing something. So now you know that if you don't use shared collections, my collection that I'm going to provide eventually, or the Advanced English collection, or some other more obscure collections from SuperMemo, or you import from Anki, you don't have to worry about that. And if you do, please check the video once it's done, how to import a deck from Anki and preserve the order. Now it's time to see the ordinal number, or just ordinal, in SuperMemo. So the ordinal is an element parameter. If we go to the element parameter dialog, we see this ordinal. Now that is a different element we have seen before, but if we go back, that is the same element we have seen on the element number. Do you see 406,000? Okay. Do you see the ordinal is different? And in this one, hey, they seem to be very close, right? First difference doesn't have to be unique, can be repeated. I will say 100. And the other one, here, I will say 100. So first one, I can change it, modify it, unlike the element number, and can be duplicated, unlike the element number. So it's used to assign sequence or positions in a logical learning order. Particularly interesting for pending elements in the pending queue. For instance, when you install the Advanced English collection, everything is pending, but if you click on Learn, what you're going to do is start the new material learning from the pending queue, because nothing is memorized, and the order of elements you're getting, it goes purely by this, by the ordinal number, because they want the sequence that, hey, first the easy vocabulary, the more complex vocabulary, and so on, regardless of the priority, the position on the knowledge tree, and so on. So far, the ordinal is dynamic, it can be changed anytime, is user settable, the user can set it, modify it anytime. Primarily controls the presentation of the pending queue, because of commercial and structured collections like the Advanced English. And by default, when new elements are added to your own collection, SuperMemo adds like 10,000. The reason for that is that they want to put them at the end of the ordinal queue. But what happened is that if your collection goes beyond 10,000, like mine, is not that intuitive. You may notice that the values I got were 60 something thousand, and that is because this collection, the size, is about that, 60 something thousand. It's no longer adding 10,000 on top of that. But this is only for the beginning, so you have freedom, leverage, to rearrange and so on. So now let's start with the element parameters. Every element in SuperMemo has an interval, because you not just have flashcards, you have everything. All of the entire learning flow is scheduled in SuperMemo. If it's scheduled, they have intervals. So for instance, even if a topic doesn't have a spaced repetition, it's still scheduled with a different algorithm. So therefore there's an interval. Then how do you see an interval? Easy. It's always there. Element window is here. In this case it's 4 days. Then if you have edit, read, compose tools or alarm panel, you're not going to see it because it's inside in the learn. Here you go. Then it's also in the element data window. You have the interval tab, which among others, you'll have the current interval as well. You can also click it if you want. Nice. You can also see it on the element parameters window, and is here, the interval. So then, if I go to the next item, I can see that the interval is still 1 day. Awesome. And then if I go to the browser, I can also see the intervals. You see I have just 1 day, and sometimes I have more than 1,000 days, even 2,000 days, 4,000 days, and so on. So items are scheduled according to spaced repetition, so the interval is ever growing. Then for for topics or tasks, perhaps they are not that crazy in the year, can be in the thousands, but they have the lifespan is limited. Eventually you will be done. And then if it's dismissed, like this, you will see that it says 0 days. It is also telling me it's dismissed. In SuperMemo, the minimum interval is always a day. Regardless of the element type, if it's an item or not, it's 1 day. So if you see 0, you can simply assume it's because it's dismissed or is pending. If you remember, we also have here a pending. It also says 0. So you're safe that if it says 0 days, the interval means it doesn't take part on the learning process. Then, in this course, we will see about the intervals, how they grow, how you can modify the intervals, the consequences of the intervals, how the priorities influence the interval, and all of that. But for now, we only want to get familiar with the parameter of interval. So one of the parameters or attributes in any element in SuperMemo is the background. Usually from this course, very late, we're going to focus on templates. And via template is how you can set the background color, the rearrangement of the components, and so on. But it's not essential, meaning that you could neglect templates and customize if you want the background. In this case, it's a shade of gray. If I go to slides, for instance, it's all black. So you can right-click, color, and here I can modify it. I'll put, yellow, and now it's yellow. And for now it will be yellow. So if I go back, and I come once again, it is still yellow. It's part of the property of this element. And that's it, only this element. It's very unlikely you will do that manually. I mean, you can do it, but you will do it via templates. So you will save tons of time. And remember, this is the background of the element. This is different from the background of SuperMemo, which is this shade of gray you see around my body, right? It's not the same shade of gray of the element background. And I still have the Windows background. So in my case, it's now gray as well. So remember, we have the windows, which I can make SuperMemo transparent to see my windows wallpaper. Then SuperMemo adds a new layer, if I want to. I can add a background that is different from Windows, like I do now. And then I have the element background that is only on the element window, because it's only that particular element. And I can have, if I want, an image. Doesn't have to be a plain color. We will see this later on, but for now it's just the definition that every single element has a background, even though it's done, like this case. It's a folder, it's gone, there's the content, you still have a background. And if it looks black, like this, or white, depending how you use SuperMemo, it will be likely one of those two colors, doesn't mean there is no color. You have the color, like all black. So we could simplify that any element, including the dismissed and the playing done, have a background color. Always need the background color. So now that we know what is the property of the background color for an element, we're going to see how we can change it. So if we right click, we need to go to color, and then we can pick one of the predefined colors, or we can do our own defined custom color. Could be the case that you already know this. Usually is in XML, so you have to use X decimal, or in this case it's only decimal. Switch between 0 and 255, any value here. So let's say that you have a color that you already use in a different app and so on. You can get the values and customize it here. Now for the example, I'm going to invent one, and that's exactly the shade I want. Boom, here you go. Then, just to mention that if we right click again and go to color, the custom color is gone. It's not there. So if I go here, it's still memorized, right? Why? Because I need to click on add custom color. Now I have it. It's more or less the same experience as a very old Paint in Windows, some decades ago. But if I close down SuperMemo, so the next day you open it, that I will start my session and so on, then I right click, color, it's gone. Yet another bug or non-implementation in SuperMemo, so that don't spend a lot of time customizing colors here, because it's for the session. As soon as you close down SuperMemo, you will lose all of those. And you will need to recreate every single time. That's why, or in this case, you memorize the values, but you will need to add custom color, then the second color, because I have now only used one. But if I had 10 or the 18 I can do, I will have to now input, yeah, the second color was this one, Nice. Then the third color was to re-input this. Don't spend time with this. You're going to lose it. You can only do one, because it will only memorize the last one you did. That's my suggestion. Just do one. Then you want different colors, background colors, then do this, and then save it as template. And the template you will see in the dedicated section that will remember the background color. So you don't need to add the background color every single time. Therefore, if it's a customized color, I don't care. I don't need to choose it every time, because to apply the template, it will be done. That's why it's good to know. You can do the colors, but once you have decided this, you can forget about this until when you want a new template for whatever reason. You have a new flow, a new requirement, and okay, let me do some other color. That you don't like any of those, you just select and create your own. So that's everything you need to know about this feature of colors that applies to the background, but can also be applied to the color of text, let's say. It is the same rationale and the styling. I'm not going to show it here because that will be covered in a dedicated section. We'll introduce the comments. Every single element in SuperMemo can have a comment, even regardless of its state. If it's memorized, pending, or dismissed, you can add the comment. Then, if we go to the parameters, this is the comment. By default, you get there. This is a comment. Actually, yes, no. A comment is not a parameter. It's being linked. It's an attribute that is being linked because the comment exists by itself. Meaning the same comment can be linked to more elements, if this makes sense. Then, usually here, what you'll say is if it's a topic or research this, or if it's an item, or this is taken, or let's say it's a book suggested by whatever person, right? So later on, I can do subsets if I want to and search the books or the topics that they have suggested by this person, if I do care. Or anything that this comes from a book that was OCR, so perhaps there are some mistakes here and there, that instead of an A it's an O, this kind of thing. Whatever, it's for you. SuperMemo doesn't have this in consideration for the scheduling or anything. It's just like if it was a POSIT for you. Then, something we will see, let me save. Something we will see later on, not now, because the purpose is just to introduce the comments, is that there's such a thing as a comment registry. Comment registry. So here you can have, hey, OCR, and here you go. That's my element. Do you see the element of welcome to Pleasurable Learning? Here you go. I have some other comments, like for the course. Something I wanted to add on the course during my reps. Something I had wrong. That the Rosetta Stone this is wrong. This comes from my shared collection, but hey, it's outdated. Now they have known it's a different material and stuff like this. So you can use it as some sort of a tag, let's say. But we will see this later on in the course. The comment registry, what you can do with the comments, how you can repurpose comments as some sort of tags and so on. But for now, just to let you know that the comment is any text, doesn't have to be a word, can be a very long text if you want. Let me do one example. So look at this. So this comment is associated to this element. In order to delete the comment, I need to delete the element or manually here clearing out, deleting the text, and now the comment is gone. Something in the comment registry has been deleted. There's no way you can know that, right? But no worries. For the Fluency, you just use the comments if you want. If you don't want to be present here, or it's just a folder. So you just apply like this. You apply done, like this. You apply done, so you can still add some text, a note when it's everything empty. That even if I'm done now, I still want to know that this was suggested by my friend, or it was AI generated, stuff like this. We will see this on the mastery path of the course in the much later, because this is the missing returns. That's for now all you need to know about comments. For the interface, it's a parameter, even though it's like templates and groups. Do you see? You can choose from the concepts you have or the templates you have. Same for comments. Actually, it works like this, even if it's not shown like this, with manual input. At the end of the day, it's the same. It's its own registry. It's not just a number. Now it's time to present the title, the element title. Every element in SuperMemo has a title. So if we go to the element parameters, dialog, where's the title? It's here. It's funny because it's also in the caption. We have the element number, and the title until it has a space. But we also have the title here, and it's editable. I can modify it here. It's a very long article, until here. If I accept, now I have changed the title. If we go to the knowledge tree, you see that also has a title. Doesn't even fit the screen. We will see that this title, usually it's automatic in SuperMemo, especially if you use incremental reading features. So it saves you a lot of time, but you can also set it manually. And there are some use cases. For now, in the Fluency track, you just know this exists, can be modified, and that's all. You will keep going with the automatic titles. And for the mastery, we will see the nuisances, the nuances and details about this behavior, why you should care, in which scenarios it's useful to override it, and so on. But that is enough for presenting the title. By the way, it's limited to 120 characters. So almost like old school Twitter kind of thing. We will focus now on the titles, element titles, but especially the behavior that is automatic, that I'm not setting any title, but in SuperMemo, every single item, every single element requires a title. So SuperMemo does what's called title placeholders. If I create something new from the knowledge tree, like a topic, whoop, do you see I have a title already? And in the element window, in the caption, I have that. So what actually is this? Let me paste it here for convenience. So that is one of the placeholders. So basically is the date, year, month, and day. Then you have the time, hour, minute, and seconds. And then the element number. I'm more than 500,000. Okay. I can know that because here's the element number. The only difference is that I don't have the 1000 separator. That's it. And then between parentheses, the name of the collection, which in my case is called learning. This is a way for SuperMemo to make this unique. Because if you really stretch it, and I use, let's say, a scripting, or I am pretty fast, and I generate more than one topic in the same second, you will say, hey, it will be a duplicate. No, because you have the element number, and the element number is unique. So you guarantee that the title is unique, at the very least. But now we did some trickery, because that's the automatic name, and this happens when it's empty. When I create something new, do you see now it's 2 minutes later? Okay, and in this case has been reused a vacant number. That's why it's lower. Okay, but this is empty. That's why it's using the placeholder. Meaning that if I put something like hello, now it becomes hello, because the automatic titling is either a placeholder if there's no text, or gets the text from the first HTML or text component. What is that? Here I have an HTML. I could have multiple, or just plain text. In this case it's an item. You see I have two. It will get a text from the first one, which is item. It's very meta, I know. Could be something more illustrative of what is an item. You see now the title is the same as the question. It won't get a text from here. That is the answer. That is not affecting the title. The title is always the same. The automatic title gets the content of the first non-empty text component being text, plain text, HTML, or rich text, an obscure one that still exists. If all of them are empty, you'll have a placeholder. But here it's some trickery, because now I copy-pasted this from the clipboard, from the title. So now, what is this? Can you take a guess? Is this automatic or it's user set? Meaning, if now I add learning 2, it's going to update. Yes, it's going to update. Because it's getting the text from the component, which happened to be the same as a placeholder until now. Hope this makes sense. This is then the question is, why should I care about this? Well, you don't want that, because then how you're going to search for this? It's not meaningful, this title, right? So we're going to see use cases for everything we have said until now about titles. So it's not an official name, but there's something that I call it like this. Do you see now I have the placeholder? It's the automatic name. That I have the date, the time of the day, and the element number, and the collection name in parentheses. Awesome, because it's blank. If now I use whatever, in this case, user-defined element titles, it's some text, now it becomes this. This is a big difference, because this title is still automatic. The only thing I did is just adding text. And SuperMemo, what does for the automatic title is get the text from the first text element, from the first text component. You can have multiple components. It's not user set, meaning that if I change that, if I change this, I also modify the title as a consequence. It is being synced still. This is not a user-defined title. It's an automatic title still. What's the difference? I need to go either here in the parameters, and now I say this is a user-defined element title. Now, do you see? Now the title is different from the contents, meaning that if I add stuff here, nothing changes. Do you see? The title doesn't change. It's very subtle. It's not the only way to do it. You can also modify the title here in the knowledge tree, and we'll have more or less the same result that if I have done it here in the content, in the parameters dialog. So at least we're understanding more this automatic title behavior versus the user set or user defined title. Hope it's clear enough, but no worries. We will see real examples in the mastery track and use cases of this. One example of a use case when you should or you may want to rename titles, element titles. So here I have done some extracts. So from the same source, all of those are extracts. In this case are shorter, so it's easy to grasp the example. So I want to standardize thematically those extracts. Usually, if this was just incremental reading, I don't care about the title because it's temporary. But it won't be the case if this was larger, so that's the limitation of the example, that this can become a concept or a folder, and the title is more meaningful. Or I'm creating this, meaning the flow is for incremental writing. So I'm generating the content myself. So what happens here? It says an eukaryotic cell is any cell, the cell nucleus is a membrane, often called the powerhouse of the cell, mitochondrion, So the titles are basically the text. Awesome. So what I can do, I have here already the solution, is to rename that. First, if you want, for redundancy, you can include the parents. This is more the Anki style. In Anki, it's double colon. For SuperMemo, there's no need to, because you will have the hierarchy anyways. But what I could do is rename this. Oh, that will be a eukaryotic cell. And the plasmatic curriculum, oopsie. Then the plasmatic reticulum. But then, hey, I have something even more specific. So this could perhaps, if I want it, what I could do is that this one can become a child. So I can leave it like that if I want to keep the hierarchy of extracting. But at least the title already tells me, hey, it's more in detail of the prior one. This is now the nuclear. Do you see? So imagine this is super large. Could be from a textbook. I'm not going to do a textbook because it will be too large to fit on the screen and this video will be too long. But you get the point. And this mitochondrion, perhaps if it's long, I will do several extracts and so on. So this will be very deep in the hierarchy. I could have hundreds of extracts and hundreds of flashcards. Not in this case because it's just 2 lines. Remember the limitation of the example. But do you see the difference as before? First, now there is a lot of empty space because it doesn't contain the content. It's just a title. I rename it. It's 1 word or 2 words. I can really see. Sorry, that is a typo. I can already see who is a child. If I want to move it, I could do that. Same as here. Then that's the end of the example. Then in this particular case, it's not good because it's just what? 1 flashcard, 2 flashcards at most. It's not worth my time. Then if this will become then a folder or even a concept that photosynthesis becomes a concept by itself, then yeah, absolutely. Or if I'm writing this, I'm writing an article about this and I'm making more or less the skeleton, the format, and eventually I will have a text with headers, subheaders, and all of that. And those topics, those titles will be the headers. Those are the good options. Then in the mastery track, or perhaps in the full flows series, you will see this in practice. But not here, because I will need more than 1 hour for that. And I want it to be something genuine, not something fake like this. But you already got the point. So that is a use case that is worth modifying the title for the elements. So we're going to see one of the use cases, more, let's say, functional use cases of renaming element titles. And that is to recover, basically, is to recover the sync. Because you know that once you have a custom user set title, it doesn't update anymore if you modify the content. Then let's use one pretty example. Let's see what's there. Okay. Let's use this example. Windows Explorer. Search query filter files with 1 in parentheses in their file names, while when downloading. Oh my god. Okay, it's a pretty damn good example. Why? Because I have a typo. So even if I don't want to reformulate, just fix the typo, it's a thing, right? So let's see first until where I have the title. Okay, do you see I have the typo in the title? Awesome. This still is being synced, meaning that if I do downloading, I fix this. Now it should be in the title as well. Okay, so far so good, but I have always kept the synchronization. So what I'm going to do is that, in this case, in this case I have renamed it to just the answer. Because Windows Explorer, it's too long. I already know that, right? But I have modified this now manually. That means that now is a user set title. So for instance, if Windows Explorer, now it's between parentheses, it doesn't update. So here is the use case. I'm going to change the title explicitly just to explicitly match it, just for the sake to sync once again. Then, did I got that? I don't know, because SuperMemo doesn't prompt. So what I'm going to do is edit again Windows Explorer colon as it was before, and let's see if it updates. It does. Here we go. So the only purpose is that from now on, everything I do here, it will be updated. I have regained the synchronization. Then how you can do that? Easy. You copy the contents of the first element, text element. You copy the content of the first text component, and you paste it there. It's not as easy because if it's too long, then you will have ... So in case you don't know how it is exactly, easy. I duplicate it. Okay. Then this duplicate, oh shoot, it's already messed up because now the title is different. So this has already screwed up the synchronization. Let's verify that. Oh sure, okay, nice. Then if this was longer, long text, okay, I know it's dummy. Then what I'm gonna do is paste this and put it in the title. Oh, let's see what happens. Then if I go to the title, it will be easier here. Okay, long, 3 longs. Okay, even though I have more. See, already crops the title. So as long as it is cropped, that means that it will be synced from now on. I can verify that. Windows Explorer colon. Oh, not in this case. It didn't. It's too long. What can you do? Easy. You do a duplicate. So here you go. Here you have one example. And perhaps if the title is too long, like in this case, I added some more text. It's dummy. That already gives you a hint that A, the question is too long, it's not atomic enough. But at least you got the hint. At least you get the perk. Let's discuss if it's worth your time to manually setting titles. Because we have seen already that SuperMemo has an automatic behavior for titling, setting titles to elements, right? So we have also seen that you can manually override this anytime. In SuperMemo, the user has a lot of power. Then in this video, we're going to see the pros and cons more or less, or the information, so you can assess if it's worth your time. So let's start. We have the cost, which could be a few seconds per element, depending on the case. If you just add convention like spa, like this, that we will see as a use case, that hey, for me just want a few elements that I import that are in Spanish. And with this, since it's in the title, I will be very quickly filter those if I want to do a subset, or the opposite, I want them out, stuff like that. Or could be something more complex that, I don't know, I want to think about the title specifically because I am with an incremental writing flow. So first, it's about the cost in seconds, right? So we could say that if it takes 3 to 10 seconds per element, you can have it. It's a micro investment, right? That doesn't have to be always the case. Only the case when you want to change the title. So in this cases that other elements I have, because I have done some extracts, I don't care about that, right? So in this case, I'm only going to change the title of this element because this will become a folder. Actually, I can already do that. Now it's a folder. So in that case, I will invest my time into it. So first thing that is actually not written here is to decide which elements are worth it. And the elements that are worth how much time you invest. Then what is the benefit? It pays off over time. Keep in mind, SuperMemo is designed for the long term. So I can have this folder for many years or forever. So it could be interesting to spend some seconds to be compliant with my conventions or to improve it if the automatic title doesn't tell me much. So think of it like this. Are you building a temporary shelter or a permanent library. And that's the key. Why I don't invest time with some topics? Because they are temporary. Eventually, I will have read them, make a flashcard or not, and apply done. But if it's a folder, the folder will be always there. Unless I don't delete everything inside it, so I will delete extracts, flashcards, and so on inside it, which could be the case, obviously, but it will be an outlier. Usually, you don't delete that much of stuff. Therefore, hey, this is potentially for life. So it's permanent. So without manual titles, so Thematic, you're building a temporary shelter. This is especially the case if you use the SuperMemo assistant, especially for the PDF, that the knowledge tree becomes garbage, according to titles. Because you have the same title over and over again on different elements, then you cannot identify the element, the content, by the title, because you start with the content of the PDF that is always the same, or you have a lot of children that is the same name with different numbers at the beginning. It's a completely mess. So it will be this case. It looks like a temporary shelter. That I don't care about the quality because it's temporary, right? Like if it's before an exam, you cram, and then you don't care if it's messy or chaotic, because after a few weeks, you move on. Or with manual titles, but you're building a permanent library, which will be the case most of the time. Like labeling a folder. Here, more or less, it's a table. I know it doesn't look like a table, but it's SuperMemo, you know. More or less depends, if it's worth your time, depends on your goal, the purpose. So depends on your purpose, perhaps you're wasting your time, and someone else is not, just because it has a different goal. Okay. So let's say that I'm learning a simple list, short-term goal. Vocabulary for next month, just to know how to pay, where's the bathroom, the train station, and that's it. And after I visited that country, I no longer care to keep that vocabulary, right? So it's not worth it, probably not. Then, I'm using SuperMemo for incremental reading of complex articles, meaning that I will need a lot of incrementalism, a lot of repetitions for that. That in that case could be essential. If you spend 5 seconds, again, I will do it on the element you import. So if I import an article about machine learning, I'll rename perhaps that, and that's it. I'm not going to rename the extracts I do, or the flashcards I do, albeit you can do it. Then, another goal. I want to build a long-term knowledge base about my profession, health, like history of Catalonia, history of the US, or whatever. In this case, could be useful because it's like your own segmentations. There are no segments that are universal, so it's how you do it, right? For instance, here I did my own with the years. Why? Because I had so many on the imports to do that I split that. And with the year already tells me enough. I renamed that. And hey, this is something I imported that year and I haven't touched yet. One example. Could be the case that you are with incremental writing. Then this will be the case. You want a precise title, so you're going to rename it manually every single time. Here I have one example. This is in health. The bad cholesterol, you will be mentally grateful for the tattling, lab test, lipid panel, LDL, instead of one of the key markers measured, Again, especially if there are folders or concepts. Well, we will see that the concepts have different names as concepts and concepts registry members, basically, or as elements. That's why you can rename them as elements in your knowledge tree for your own benefit. Just for convenience. That you only care about this for yourself, you're not on the field, then you won't rename those because, yeah, I only care what elements, what foods are rich in cholesterol, which level should I aim at, da, 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 da. And that's not much else, right? Okay. And then I get overwhelmed during review sessions, and sometimes I just give up. So if you are in this scenario, even if it's a temporary practice, but it's a practice that you come from knowledge management apps, you're used to this flow, and it's getting so much friction, feel free to do it. Later on, you will realize that, hey, perhaps the folders, but I don't need to retitle the flashcards. We will see in the use cases, some outliers, it's a good choice to rename the title so you don't give away the answer with the title, stuff like that. Then, let's follow one analogy with a filing cabinet. So imagine every piece of knowledge is a document, like in the physical world, like pen, like paper with pages. So before titles, you write the document and throw away it on a massive pile in the middle of the room. To find anything, you need to shift through the whole pile, like before, right? Manual titles, you write the document, takes about 5 seconds to write 1992 tax return on a folder and place it in a file cabinet under T. More or less this is the old analogy, right? Because now I do search, oh yeah, tax, and I have tax of every single year, boom, that's a folder. Perhaps it's not directly what I want to see, but it's the folder. So I'm narrowing down super quickly. Perhaps I will have 10 elements there, but it will take me a very quick overview to identify the precise element I want, right? But if everything, I do this manually every time with right-click, new, and topic, imagine I have only the starting of the text. I will need to go through the content. This search is a lot more complex. I will have a lot of false negatives that they have the same content on something unrelated, all of that. So we say that the first method is faster, but because you want to retrieve information. That's the key. If you don't want to retrieve information, or it's very rare, perhaps it's not a good choice to invest time on it. That's why we have the pragmatic recommendation. Depends on your use case and the intensity of that use case. So you don't have to go back and fix your entire collections of thousands of all elements. I said items should be elements. You can do it from now on. Form a habit. So next time that you see it, oh, this happened again. Oh, let me change the title. Then you will revisit that element eventually, and you will be able to experience this. And since you haven't touched anything from the past, you are actually doing some kind of A/B testing. The A/B testing is uneven in quantity, but the larger your collection, the more uneven it is, but hey, it's a first start. And keep it simple. For instance, what I do are only I have some nesting. For instance, the course. All of this has been done manually because I want this precise title, short title. I don't want the content of the topic until 120 elements, characters. But for instance, what is here, you can see that I didn't care at all, right? What is in the 2025 folder. And the other is fix as you go. That, hey, shoot, I have an issue during a search or something like that. Then I do it on the fly. I only spend the time fixing the titles when I see the need. I don't do it preemptively. So conclusion. You can view manual titling as a chore. That will be the wrong way because it's like an investment. You spend some time today to save or have convenience in the future. This is very similar to what we'll see later with images. We have the image, look at this. What is this? Percentage D0, percentage A2, this is crap. Oh, okay. So if I had a description that is handwriting or a man taking a handwritten note, whatever, it will be more helpful for me. Like, for instance, barefoot landing. Oh, okay. I get that from step 1, and I imply that there is a step 2, right? It's the same thing. I spent some time putting a meaningful title here because I'm going to reuse it. If I'm pretty sure I'm not going to reuse it, I don't care, right? It could be a crap like this. Same here. You don't need to be intelligent and efficient. Only spend time renaming titles that are worth renaming. It will be useful tomorrow. So the crucial question of this video is worth my time to manually setting titles? The answer depends entirely on your goals of using SuperMemo. And you have to break it as easy as that. The cost benefit. From the practical point of sense is cost benefit. The time you invest has to be less than the time you will save. Or there's no benefit. So that's more or less everything you need to know. And remember that we also have quite a few use cases. So still, if you don't know how useful is this, this reasoning, when you watch this video, especially after the use cases, you'll have a better, a more deeper approach to decide this. And as always, start incremental. And if you have wasted your time, you'll have just wasted a fraction of your time because of incrementalism. Incrementalism always wins. So we're going to focus now on dismissing elements in SuperMemo. Remember that the dismiss state is the yellow one. So if I go just with learn, so here I have one example. This is, I tried SuperMemo after wondering for some years, here's my blunt opinion. It's a Reddit post about someone sharing their experience with SuperMemo. So this is a very good example that for me, this doesn't have much value for learning. There's no learning margin for me, but I still want to keep it in my collection because perhaps I want to reference this article when I share my own opinion, an article myself. I write an article and I want to cite this, or because users usually experience this and that and so on. One of the things I can do is Control D to dismiss it. So this, it's not going to appear in my repetitions. I don't want to set, but later on, if I do a subset, or I go neural, or I do a search, or what I have in SuperMemo, blah, 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 and this appears, then I will be able to use it for reference. And I actually have the reference already. So I have the URL, I can go to the source, the title, and stuff like that, right? So what I did is dismissing it. As a consequence, I'm not going to see it explicitly during my learning flow, but I can revisit it. Meaning that if I never actually end up creating a video for my course or an article about this thing, it will be in my collection, just archived, but not creating any noise. That's why now it says dismissed. The interval is reset to 0. The repetitions are also reset to 0 because the repetition history is reset. Do you see here it says reset? So you had the automatic and now the dismissed. And importantly, the priority goes to the bottom of the queue. It's 100% because it's the very last one. Meaning that now, if I suspend this one, I think those are the comments. I dismiss this one. Now this is 100%, is the same position as before, and the prior is just one below, because SuperMemo sends that to the last one. So if there's another one, it will be the last one always in the priority queue. And the other one I did, it will be the second last, the third last. If I suspend, let's say, 1,000 articles, it will be on the last 1,000 spots, places in my priority queue. So it could be the case that is 90%, the first one I dismissed today. It makes sense. So we are going to cover an overview of the primary use cases for dismissing elements in SuperMemo. So we're going to mention them at high level without actually seeing them, a real example. Okay. The first category could be archiving and reference. When, for instance, the information is outdated, but I still want to keep it in my collection. Instead of deleting it, I will dismiss it. It's something I don't want to see, I don't want to learn, but perhaps I want to retrieve later. I just don't know, just in case. So it's basically for reference and reachability. So I can search and retrieve that without burdening my learning schedule. Another one, depends how you use SuperMemo, especially for incremental reading, are the parents in the nursery. So you went through all of the text, you have read all of this, and instead of applying done, as we will see that, hey, I'm telling SuperMemo I'm done, I have read all of this, instead you just dismiss it. If you apply done, this includes dismissing, but deletes the content. No, I just want to keep the content. I will dismiss it still, but I want to keep the content. This can be the case, especially at the beginning. You are more adverse to do this, but especially if it's a book or a Wikipedia article, something that is very, very easy to find later. It's not, oh man, I will have an issue finding this again. Feel free to delete it instead. And third, if you use tasks, you can dismiss tasks. If you're using SuperMemo for this, just as a history. Because usually the flow, by the way, we're not going to see the tasks in the Fluency course, in the Fluency track of the course. But long story short, you do the task until it's done. When it's done, you remove it, right? Then you could dismiss them just to have a history of what you did last year or whatever for a project. And hey, I finished the project, and that were all of the tasks for that project until completion. It's a use case. Then, next chapter, is information not worth memorizing? You have low value content, it's low value, but it still makes what I call the importability threshold. It's enough to be on your collection. It's something that perhaps is temporary. Hey, I know I will need this once I buy this thing for the kitchen. Oh yeah, I can retrieve it here, but once I do this, I don't need it anymore. Or for the next 2 decades, I don't need it. I'm not going to read or memorize any of that, right? So therefore, I have it in my collection as dismissed, so I can search for it, I can retrieve it, but I'm not going to learn out of that. Not worth the effort. Because in my real life, it's not worth the effort. Another solution, another use case, it is redundant information. That, yeah, I'm very into this. That is, let's say, new for me. And I have imported multiple sources that I know they overlap fully. It's just, I still don't know which one I will like. It's just about the taste. But it's adding no new information. So therefore, what I would do is, it's too soon, too premature to take this decision yet. So let me dismiss it because it's very likely that we will start incrementalism with different sources of information that they fully overlap. So we'll kind of lose effort and time. So let me take a step back. Let me dismiss it. Let me go through one or just two. And once I'm done, let me check the other ones I imported. Oh yeah, it's fully redundant. It's not worth it. Let me delete it now. But in the meantime of incrementalism, you keep it dismissed. Then we have the just-in-time. So learning that is no longer needed, more or less the same as the low-value content at some degree. One, you already know that it won't be useful later on, like this new machine in the kitchen and so on. This is the other way around. That I don't know, and today, hardware failure. Oh wow, I have to replace a piece of hardware in my computer, right? Oh, how I do that? What do I need? Or stuff like that. What are the pros, cons, the best choice I can do? But I didn't have that need yesterday. It has been today. So I will import some pages, or I ask AI and import this, until I make the decision. I buy this online, let's say in Amazon, and that's it. But I will keep it dismissed while I have the warranty of that piece, because perhaps it was not the best decision, or I can still ask for a refund and get my second option, whatever. In this meantime, I will keep it in quarantine kind of thing. And yeah, it's just-in-time learning and it's no longer required. But just in case, for legal reasons, I will keep it. Awesome. Then a third category of dismissing elements for reducing learning and managing overload. One is just for this, reducing the load. It's too much. Let's say I have in my knowledge tree, oh, look at this, humanities. I do this for fun. Let me dismiss it. It's a use case. I don't suggest that. If you use SuperMemo, how it's meant to be used, just by priorities and so on, it will be enough. And you don't have to care, oh, I have 22,000 topics outstanding, oh my god. I don't care. It's just descriptive. So that's the flow. It's more drastic, but you should go by low and priority instead. And then you will manually reintroduce those, which you could do, forget them and use a pending queue as well. There are many flows. This is the most drastic. I don't suggest that, but it's a use case you can do. And then you can use dismissal as a temporary removal. The difference with forgetting is that forget, it's not now, later. This later could be tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, next decade. But eventually, it will come. You will see that on the new content learning stage, new material learning stage. But with dismiss, you're telling SuperMemo, I don't need this now, if ever. Perhaps I'm not sure if I ever did that. Just in case, I keep it in my collection as dismissed. That is the key difference. So it's a temporary removal that, hey, don't mess around with this, don't show me that until I change otherwise. If I don't take action, ignore it for life, basically. And one last thing, a fourth category, that is only one case, that you dismiss it as last resort of formulation issues. So you're lapsing that much that item that often that it becomes a leech. You don't know what to do. You don't get any good formulation strategy. You cannot solve it. So you know what? For the time being, I dismiss it. Perhaps you see, if it's memory interference, it's a good case. Then later on, when this other knowledge is solidified, crystallized, then you undismiss it, put it back, and you will be able to memorize it. Because of memory interference. Could be something else. But it's the same case. So as last resort, you use dismiss, kind of temporary, and then you go back. So those are more or less the four kind of classes of use cases that you can see on SuperMemo with dismissing. Dismissing without deleting, without setting done. And in the mastery track, we will see examples of every single one of those we have mentioned. And some other subcategories, let's say, that are just nuanced to each other. But it still makes a difference long term in SuperMemo, because if you memorize it back, the interval will be growing different, and yeah, there's some details that are neglecting in the Fluency. I would like to share the basic considerations when you dismiss elements in SuperMemo, especially when you're not applying done. You are just dismissing it without deleting the contents. You want to keep the contents for a reason. First, the priority is always 100%. It goes to the very last on your priority queue. If I dismiss it now, this very same element, now it's 100%, it's the very last. I can still overwrite this now and reset it to what it was or something else, if I want to. It's possible, because the user has a lot of power. In SuperMemo, the user can overrule every single decision that the software takes. But just to let you know that it will be the very last one, meaning if now I dismiss another element, that element will become the last one, and this one will become the second last. And the same, if let's say I do dismiss 1000 items, they will be on the last 1000 places in my priority queue. From the dead last to the first. Okay. Then, the learning process. As we have seen, dismissed elements never are presented in regular learning sessions, not in any other, like subset, neural, and so on. There is one very strict exception that is random. You can do random review, and you can target, if you really want, random dismissed elements in your collection. It's a very, very obscure feature. But just to let you know that we cannot say this categorically for this reason. We will see this much later on the mastery course. And then reintroducing. You can reintroduce dismissed elements, yep, with remember. Set remember, yes. But it's important to know that their repetition history, it's lost, it's there. You see it has been reset, so I still know when I imported that and I made repetitions. If this was genuine, we will have seen repetitions for years and years if it was an item. This is reset. That means you need to set the first interval. If I do it now, set remember, I decide 4, okay, is a suggested one, but this is already different from before. Now we cannot see it, but it's not guaranteed it was 4. I look now at the priority. It was 22. Why now it's 55? I have only set an interval. But look at the priority, what it was. It was crazy high. So now if I want, I will need to match this priority myself, and now they have the same. As if nothing happened, kind of thing. But they still will have consequences. In this case, the topic had the first repetition. But if this had a lot of repetitions, the A factor will be higher, the other metrics will be different, meaning, to simplify, that how these intervals will grow will be different if I never set dismiss to begin with. I'm not affecting this and the next repetition. I'm indeed affecting every single feature repetition. They will be forever different. Perhaps just tiny details that is not a big deal, but qualitatively they are different. And if it's something you want to introduce eventually, you can use forget instead of dismiss. Those are more or less the main considerations you need to understand, because then when you set dismiss to something, you will know that. You are putting everything to the bottom of the priority queue. You're going to ignore that. You're going to retrieve it just by search. That's it. Or by manually in the knowledge tree, if you remember what it is. And the effects there is in the repetition history. And that's a fact. If I set dismiss once again, now it says I have 0 repetitions. If I ever filter, something we will see later on, but I want to filter by repetitions, let's say 2, that topic is not going to appear, because now it has 0. Could be the case that I have 50 repetitions and then I dismiss it. For SuperMemo, that doesn't have 50 repetitions, it has 0. Even though it will appear here, all of the repetitions. This has 0 reps. This also will affect the searchability if you use filters. So have this in mind. So now that we know what is a dismissed element, in the stats window, we can see that there's one parameter just for this. Says dismissed. 21,547. So those elements out of 64,000 total are not scheduled. They will never appear in SuperMemo in my daily sessions. Why? Because they are dismissed. Then can be dismissed because I dismiss them manually, or that I applied done. That we will see what it means, that also includes this missing. But you get rid of the content. It becomes a folder. We have seen folders already. So I can already tell you that most of those elements are folders. Not all of them, necessarily, because could be just dismissed with the content. So that's how you more or less appreciate the collection. That means that a third of my collection doesn't take part on the learning process. That doesn't mean it's good or bad, it's just descriptive. So it depends if you import a lot, you have a lot of backlog, or you import a little, so most of what you do is already processed, it will be higher in this case. Because you will have items and folders. The topics will have been read, meaning applied done or deleted. So, for now, just don't worry about this, the interpretation. This is just qualitative, how many dismissed elements there are. And now you know, from now on, when you see dismissed, how many you have. And if it's 0 at the beginning, it's perfectly fine at the beginning. Now let's see what it means to forget elements. We have seen memorizing, now forgetting. Okay, so I have a dummy element here. What I can do is right click, then the element menu, learning, and forget. You may notice that there's no key binding for it, unlike dismiss that we have seen, or remember, right? That's because it's not enforced. Why? Because forget will send the element to the pending queue. With incremental reading, you don't require that queue. Then, as soon as you click forget, you have a prompt. Hey, do you want to forget this element? Yes, but you are still not done. That's a key difference. If you remember, this missing goes to the bottom of the priority queue. But here, it still is in the priority queue. Actually, the priority is untouched, and this item is actually the very first in the priority queue. I did that on purpose to illustrate this more obviously. Doesn't change the priority, then doesn't change the position in the queue. But what it does is inserting the element to the pending queue, and then to what? To where? By default, it will be the last, 100%. In my case, I already have 4,333 elements in my priority queue. But I could say no, put it in the middle. Or no, that on top, the first one. Meaning that once I start the new material, that will be the very first element I will have. I have an opportunity to decide this. And I don't know why, when later on in the course we will see the operations in bulk, when we forget in bulk, we don't have this option. It always goes to the bottom. I don't know why. So what I suggest is to keep 100%. You keep it FIFO. First in, first out. The use cases are very minimal within the already very minimal case of using the pending queue, which will be used, it will be repurposed already, because we have the priority queue now. So remember this. Now, the icon is pale or sky blue, meaning it's pending. Here also says it's pending. The repetitions are gone, 0 reps and 0 days, because it actually resets the repetition history. So that is how you forget an element. Then, how you can see this element by memorize, once again now, or organically by the stage of new material. And by the way, one last detail. I forgotten and I have said forget an item. That doesn't mean I have forgotten it in the sense of memory recall. That's why I don't have any labs being counted here. Because forget and remember is about, hey, are you in the learning process or not? Not in the sense that, hey, I remember the answer or not. And that's why we could also do the same thing with topics, tasks, and concepts. It's not limited to items. So I can have this topic, and also I can forget it. Easy. We have seen dismissing and memorizing and forgetting elements. Those operations you can have in SuperMemo. But we're going to focus now, especially between remember and forgetting. It's not a toggle. So you may be tempted to think, if we go to Anki, that's just a flashcard, that I can do just toggle suspend, right? Hey, it's even the same color. So dismissing is like suspending in Anki, right? This is ignored, so Anki will ignore this. Why? Because this is a real toggle. It means that once I toggle this off, you will have the due date, the outstanding date, as if nothing have happened. No repetition is logged, the repetition history it's the same, and so on. In SuperMemo, that's not the case. So let me create something new, a new topic. Okay, so I created a new item and a new topic. Then, let's see, it's from today and so on. Awesome. Then I dismiss it. Now it's dismissed. But now if I apply remember, Control M, doesn't matter the interval, then it actually resets the repetition history. So those two or whatever repetitions there are, ignored. On top of the priorities, the interval, most likely it's not even here, the A factor, which will have an impact on the element, and so on. We're not going to go into details, but there are other stats that have been modified and will impact any consequent repetition. What about items, right? So this expects to be in the future July 21st. Okay. Then I will just dismiss it. Now I don't have the feature, it has been dismissed. Okay. Just a minute apart. Now I memorize it once again, pretending to be a toggle, but no, it's not a toggle. Now I am the same place as before. But hey, the interval was 4 days. I could have selected the same one, but the priority is not the same, the stability is not the same, even the rotability, and other metrics as the A factor, and other metrics that are not locked into repetition, but are updated in the element. Remember all of those, among others. So remember this. Don't use remember and forget as a toggle if you are an Anki user. It's not a toggle. You're resetting, losing stuff, and affecting some calculations with the algorithm. More than you may think of. In the mastery track, eventually you will know that. Now we know what is a pending element in SuperMemo. So now we can do is say, look at this number. In the statistics window, just before the dismissed, we have pending. And it says 3,131 elements. Look the hint. Number of items that have not yet been memorized. That is the key difference. It's not memorized, well, dismissed is not memorized either. But this is not yet memorized because implies that this nuisance that eventually this will be memorized or has the capability to become memorized because it's pending. Remember that once you go to the stage of new material will become memorized. Awesome. Then this is also descriptive. From my collection, roughly, now mathematically, I would say that 5% of my collection is pending. Is this good? Is this bad? None. Depends how you use it. Usually most people will have 0. You never use the pending queue. You will have thousands if you use, for instance, the Advanced English collection. Everything is pending by default. Or you import stuff from Anki or other places. You will have the pending queue. Outside of those outliers, if you use SuperMemo for incremental reading, you're not going to have pending. Or if you repurpose the pending queue, which is what I do. When I want the sequence, that is the case, I want sequence and stuff like this. So all you need to know about this is the number. Don't aim at 0. Don't aim at a lot. The higher the better. It's just descriptive. Oh, good to know that 5% of my collection is pending. Now it's time to focus on memorizing elements. What does that mean? For instance, this very same element, my root element, it's dismissed. It's not part of my learning process. And this item, it's pending. Doesn't take part on the repetitions either. So what you can do is Control M to remember. But what happens is that we're bypassing something that SuperMemo algorithm does, and is the initial interval. Or startup interval. This is usually calculated from the priority when you do a close deletion. The priority of the source, the topic you perform close deletion. We don't have this information here. That's why by default SuperMemo will generate one interval, in this case 4, but you can still modify it right away. You can say, oh, no, I want just 2, or you can do it by date. But as soon as you move on, it will update. Do you see now I will put 10 days? If I do it the other way around, so let's say 17, hey, now updates the interval. But the other way around, it does not update the calendar. Remember this detail. And in case you don't know, for whatever reason, what date is today, you have it here. Now it's June 6th. I suggest to always use the default, unless you want to see tomorrow or something specific. And now it is memorized. We can see that by the color, and this will be shown on the in 4 days. We can do the same with the concept. Control M. Hey, it's not working. We need to press escape because the element window is not focused. Now Control M. Hey, what happens? What's happening? Once again, it's out of focus. The contents window is gone. Something happened with the layout. Okay. So Control M. In this case, it's 4 once again, but it's not necessarily 4. Do you see in this case it's dismissed? It's right there, before it was pending. As soon as I click OK, now I have just the date of the next repetition. Meaning that if you see the date, any date, it will be the date of the next repetition, means it's memorized. It's not labeled as memorized. And it has a consequence. Look at that, now I have the repetition history. And if I go to the item with that, it might create the first repetition that was reset before. That is more or less the overview. In the mastery track, we will see a lot of use cases, the details there are in the repetition history that will affect the filtering and other stuff. But the fluency is just enough. How do you memorize dismissed or pending elements? With set remember, Control M, and set the default starting interval, and that's it. Now we know what is a memorized element and actually a dismissed and pending. So basically the memorized, we also have it in the stats window, but we have more precision. Unlike pending and dismissed, that we only have the total. How many of those are items or topics? We don't know. We can know, but not just with discount. We need to take the browser for that. But memorized, here we have the total, 40,154, which represents 92% of the collection. Huh? That doesn't add up, right? Look. Pending, 3,000. Yeah, okay. I have 64,000, right? So you have about 17,000 that are not memorized. No? Look at the memorized. Look at the dismissed. 21, that is 24,500. 24,500 elements that are pending or dismissed. That will be 40,000 plus 24. Yeah, makes sense. More or less it's like this. Just by mentally, without precision, adds up. So we can say that memorized is the total minus the pending minus the dismissed. You will get this count. What doesn't add up is the percentage, right? Wait a second. 92.8%, if I do the math, the number of memorized by the total is just 61.6, 61.9, so about 62%. Why on earth is saying 92.8? Doesn't add up. Ha ha ha! That is a key difference. You remember the dismissed, we cannot distinguish which is generally dismissed, but there's the content, and what has been applied done, therefore it's a folder. That is the difference. SuperMemo here is not taking into account the folders, just the dismissed or the poorly dismissed, or perhaps just the pending. We can know that because now I will copy the same, the memorized over the memorized plus the pending, which are 3,131. What's going to do? Boom, 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 boom. Here I have more precision than SuperMemo, but it's 92.76, which rounds up to 8. So now we know that this percentage, for whatever reason, it's only taking into account pending. So don't take for granted that this percentage reflects this number. No, reflects this number against only the pending, not against the total in this case. Why it has been designed like this? Because SuperMemo expects you to dismiss as a consequence of applying done, not dismissing like this. I could do it like this. Let's do it so it's more clear. But now I dismiss it. We'll see later on how you dismiss the use cases of dismissing. Now this is dismissed. Now I have changed slightly the counts. But hey, there's content here. This is one example of an element that is dismissed, but the content is not gone. There are exceptions to the rule, but this video is just about the stats. Hope you have understood this stat. Do not worry about anything else that is missing. We will cover this in this course. Just focus now on understanding the percentage and the elements in the stats window. That has been achieved in this video. So we have seen the memorized, the total memorized. We got the percentage. Now we also have memorized items and topics, more specifically. So from those elements, 1,153, how many are items? 16,410, which represents roughly 45%. And memorized topics is not just topics. Are topics, concepts, and tasks that are memorized, meaning they take place in the learning. They are scheduled. They are not either dismissed or pending. So in this case, I already know that it's not 50-50, but it's rather close, right? Should you aim at this? No. Is it good? Is it bad? We will see this. Usually it's just descriptive. You can use it as some heuristic, but that's not the point to analyze this. In the mastery path of the course, you will see this. This is only now to understand what it means. Super easy. How many items are part of the learning process? Bam. And represents this ratio of the total elements memorized. That's it. And like this, that this is, even though memorized means pending, everything but pending and dismissed, the dismissed are not taken into account for this percentage, but it is for this count. It's not this case. And then same for topics. There are 21,743 topics that have an interval, are scheduled for today, tomorrow, anytime in the future, or perhaps in the past, that they become outstanding and I haven't done the repetition or I haven't postponed them. So I have more than 20,000 topics in parallel. This is what it means. And represents a little more than 50%, 54.2% of my entire memorized elements. And again, not just topics. It when they say topics, usually in SuperMemo, it's non-item element types. Topics, concepts, and tasks. What happens is that usually you will have a lot more topics. I have 100 concepts. Yeah, if I remove the concepts, it will be 21,640. So it doesn't change much. And how many tasks you may have, it's even lower than that. So that's now what you know about memorized items, and memorized non-items. It says topics, but is anything that is not an item. So now it's time to tackle the memorized day. First, it says memorized, but it's memorized items per day. In my case, it's 10.5 items per day with 4 decimal points. Okay. Then, should you get this as a reference? No. Should you aim at the highest, the better? No. This means that the higher the number, the more you learn, the more knowledge you have? Not necessarily. If you have a lot of redundancy, that won't be the case. Then, we will focus just on the metric, not on the interpretation, the goals, and so on. Is the items you have in your collection divided by the days of your collection. So my collection now is 4 years, 9 months, and 12 days. You convert these to days, how many days there are. I know, 2,000 something, to say something. 2,000 days, to put something round, and you have this number. Then, what happens? If you create items, but then you delete the item, this is updated. So if I delete a few, which I actually did, now I have 1,400. Why? Because here in the flat, I moved most of this to Anki. Also because of the sake of the course, at some degree, right? So now, if I delete this, let's say astronomy, do you see? It's updating live. Not just the items, but other metrics, the outstanding, the percentage, the burden, everything is being updated. So now it's A. Now it's not 10.5, now it's 10.2. So don't take this necessarily of what you have done. That is a key difference because some metrics are cumulative, like repetitions. 1,074,547. Even if I delete the elements, the items in this case, this is kept, but not this one. This only represents what is actually in your collection. So you have deleted this, or you have moved it to a different collection, that, hey, now I have a dedicated collection for English and so on, this will become lower. So have this in mind. This takes only the current content of the collection, not the cumulative stat. And the other question you may have is, okay, items, but memorized items or all of the items? Look at the number. 10.4245. Okay, so now I'm going to open this, a few thousands, and I'm going to dismiss them. Oh, 2,000. Hey, what's happening? Look what just happened. The number went down. So, strictly speaking, it's, well, it was already there, memorized. So it's memorized items. It doesn't matter if you did the repetition when it was memorized, but now it's not memorized. It's only taking into account the actual state. So if now it's not memorized, even if you created more items, this is being ignored. So it's not retroactive that, oh, this is what accumulative of what you have done, like the repetitions, is just defining the precise current state of the collection at this moment. This is what it means. So now, if I undo, sort of undo the dismissing of the items I just did, this 9 will become 10.42 once again. So have this in mind. I wanted to spend some time as an example because that is the easiest to appreciate, to modify as well. but this will set a tone to other metrics that are either current state or cumulative. That's now how you know that, hey, that doesn't add up, right? Because how many items I have? 21,331. Okay, those are total items. Then memorized 15,891. Then I can more or less estimate how many there are pending or dismissed. But since I don't have this split with items and non-items, I cannot know. I will rely on the browser, and that's what we will see, not in this section, but in the subset section. It is easier than it seems. But that is all you need to know now about memorized per day. So now that we know about what are elements and all of this, the states, the types, and so on, we can take a look at the statistics window. And now we know the total. Total just means how many elements there are in this collection. The size. The minimum is 1. When you create a brand new collection, it's just the root, you'll be 1. There is a limit, yes, it's in the power of 2. It's slightly more than 8 million. But usually you will not reach that level. You won't have enough time, material time, to go through 8 million. So this is just descriptive. How large is this collection? That's it. Then, from those elements, how many are items? 21,000, in my case, 21,331. So roughly about a third. How many are topics? It says topics, but these topics, concepts, or tasks. Again, in SuperMemo, when you have items and topics in the stats, means active recall, items or flashcards, passive material, topics, mostly topics, but also concepts and tasks. In my case, it's 22,967. Then out of this is regardless of their state. Then we will see that, hey, we have pending, we have dismissed, we have memorized, and so on. That means, for instance, that from the 21,331 items, only 15,891 items are memorized. The others are either pending or dismissed. SuperMemo doesn't tell me that. It tells me in conjugation, dismissed and pending. Doesn't differentiate items and topics. You're going to still know that through subsets. It's quite easy to do, but we won't do it until we go to the subsets section of the course. We have learned about the total, items and topics, tasks and concepts. Remember? And this is just descriptive. You should not aim at any ratio or any number. More the better. Not necessarily you can have multiple collections and split this further. It's just descriptive. Remember this. So now it's time, now that we know the memorized, it's time to take a look at the memorized panel of the status bar. What do you see in the corner? 15,175 items, 21,103 topics. If we take a look at the stats, do you see the memorized items is exactly the same, and the topics 21,000? It's just this. This is useful if you don't have the stats window. Then you know how many memorized items you have. Boom. How many topics you have memorized in your collection. Here you go. Is this useful to have it at all times? I don't think so, to be honest. But if you are ever curious that, hey, how many flashcards do I have in my collection, right? How many are taking place on the learning process? Hey, 15,000 in this collection. Okay, good to know. And that's about it. It's not something to aim at or so on. Memorized topics is slightly different. Because the more you learn, the more you read, the more you will apply it on, the less topics, the fewer topics you will have. So more or less the topics, memorized topics, are telling you more or less the overload you will have, how much you're reading in parallel. Again, there's a number to aim at. It's just the bigger it is, the more you'll know the more you will rely on priorities. So remember, this is just pure convenience. All of those two memorized stats are also in the stats window. So that will be an overview of all of the states an element can have and the operations you can do to navigate or modify those stages. So let's start with the topic. You know that this color already means memorized. For topics is a green. Yellow means dismissed, and the sky or pale blue is pending. Okay. And we have seen those four options. Remember, forget, dismiss, and undismiss. Then if I have a memorized topic and I do dismiss, it becomes dismissed. Easy. And if it's dismissed, and what I apply is remember, it will become memorized. So one counteracts the other one. Awesome. On top of that, I can also do remember on a memorized topic. Yes, it's possible. There are some use cases, and there's a very little nuisance what is different. Setting remember once again instead of rescheduling. But that's for another video. What about the pending? If we have a pending topic, we set remember, it becomes memorized, the same as dismissed. Awesome. And the opposite direction is called forget. Forget is, it's memorized, send it to the pending queue. And at the same time, you can forget pending items. Is what? Yes, it's the same as remembering memorized. SuperMemo allows you to do that. I don't know if it's even intended. It's possible, and there's some use case if you really stretch it, but it's arcane. And finally, if we have a dismissed topic, will you say that, hey, if we do undismiss, it's the opposite of dismiss, right? Dismiss converts it to yellow. If it's yellow and I want to be remembered, it will be undismissed. But no, that is what remember does. Undismiss sends it to the pending queue. So the change of the state of dismissed to pending is undismissed. The only one that you need to use the menu. There's no key binding for it. Not even a logo. And one tiny detail that you cannot execute forget on a dismissed element. It won't work. It's the only combination that SuperMemo doesn't allow, even though it allows some arbitrarily stupid possibilities, like forgetting something that is already pending. And for items, it's exactly the same. The only difference is the color of the item. When it's memorized, it's this shade of blue. That's it. Everything is exactly the same. So now you know how you can navigate with all of these states, how you can modify them, and in the mastery track, we will see those cases that why should I place remember on a memorized element or forget in a pending element. As well as those differences that what happens with the priority of the element. It's kept, it's updated, it's increased, decreased, about the element's repetition history, is logging a repetition, 2 repetitions, it's resetting the repetitions. So there's a lot of little details that for the fluent you could neglect, but for the mastery you want to have this knowledge. But for the fluency that is more than enough. So in SuperMemo you can actually convert element types. Virtually every combination is possible. So if now I create a topic, I know it's a topic. It's right there, and in the parameters dialog, it says the element type is a topic. But I can click on item, and now it will become an item. As easy as that, right? But first, hey, in this case I have no template, but if I have a template that is for topics, then I have an item with a topic template. Or that's new. If I had already some history, it will become problematic because what is logged for items is not the same as what is logged for topics because items have space repetition. So now if I go to any random item, this one, okay, this is an item, has some history already. We're not going to pay attention. Just to let you know, we will cover this later. It has some history. Then, if I change it to a topic, I can do it. But then I have a non-item review with a grade. Why? Because topics you cannot grade the recall of topics. It's only for items. So this is very problematic. It's possible to do it. You can get rid of those spammy comments with repair collection and so on, but it's way too problematic to the point that the convenience is not worth it. So what I will suggest is to never convert. The only exception would be converting a topic to a concept in a way that you create concepts from an already existing topic, usually a folder, so it's dismissed without content, but not limited to that. We will see this in the upcoming section of concepts. But or a topic that upgrades to a task. Again, we are not going to see tasks in the Fluency track. But other than that you kind of upgrade the topic for a concept or a task, no other scenario. And if you have those flows, you will never use this. Never you will do what I just did. You'll create the concept in a different way, or create a task. You could do it like this if you really want it, but not the concept. Okay, so I made my point. That's why we're not going to see the combinations that are only on the mastery track, or the use cases, which usually are redundant. You can achieve the same result in a different way. Just to make my point, let's say that you have a topic, some notes, you want an item. You can extract anything. Could be an S, could be just in a space, something dummy. No worries what I'm doing. You will we'll cover that because we haven't seen extracting all of that. Some other notes. Do you see now I have another topic? But instead, hey, I wanted an item, not a topic. Okay, what I can do is the same. And here you go. Now I have an item. So I didn't convert it, I just generated one new element. And imagine that I have pictures and all of that is more meaningful to keep, because then I will just do whatever else. I can also duplicate elements, stuff like that. So there are some other even strategies you can follow. But I want to convey this. Don't convert items to topics, or items to concepts, concepts to items. This is way too problematic. Don't. Just get rid of the element if you want and create a new one. As easy as that. And if you have some content, copy the content to the other element. And that's it. So that has been the non-use cases of the the non-use cases of changing element types in SuperMemo for the Fluency track. If you really want this, wait for the mastery track. There will be like 30 videos for that. But if you don't, rule of thumb, don't ever change element types explicitly. If you do it implicitly, topic to a task, topic to a concept, nothing else. We will see an overview of the element conversion. We will see this in detail in the mastery track, but in the Fluency, it's just limited to just convert. Here we have topics, items, concepts, I just use the C, and tasks. So I don't repeat the T, I just use the K. Okay. Then any combination, any permutation, it's possible in SuperMemo. That doesn't mean, first, you should convert in any direction, and second, some actually are not well implemented. There are some holes in the implementation. For instance, I can convert an item to a task, but the task is not converted as properly in the task list, and is reconverted back to a topic instead of a task, or a concept as well. So therefore, it's better if you don't do it. Then, all you see here, all those lines in purple, are the ones that I suggest you do. So from topic to concept, back and forth, concept to topic as well, and then to topic to a task, you upgrade it, or you downgrade it to a topic. That's it. And then, if we are really, really looking into details, you could have the flow to convert a task into a concept. I would still call it valid for the Fluent, but it's already a big stretch. Most people, 99% of the people, won't ever have this flow, but it's accepted. All of the other possibilities that you see in gray, no, just don't. Because there's, albeit possible, there's some integrity check, because for instance, if it's an item, you convert it to a topic, then you will have great item repetitions that you recall, and it's impossible to recall in the repetitions for topics because you only do passive review and stuff like that. So for the shortcomings you may have to convert this for your convenience, does not outweigh the stuff and the errors you will trigger. So if you want to convert it to a topic, just create a new topic, or do, if it's a topic to an item, do a lazy, a dummy isolation, and that's it. It's a brand new element. So this is just the overview. I want to keep it simple because we're not going to see any in the Fluency. Remember, topic to something else that is not an item. If you really want an item, do a close relation. And any other combination, forget about it. We're going to introduce a new feature that you're not going to see most of the value until much later in the course. And this is duplicating elements. So it's still rather soon. We know what is an item, a topic, and so on, but we haven't done incremental reading yet. But still, I want to show you something. So the pleasurable learning, this is what? Which element type is this? It's a concept. Okay. Sometimes you may have tasks. This is problematic. The functionality of duplicating is not met. There are some holes in the implementation. That's why in the Fluency we're only going to see duplicating topics and items. Okay. So here I have one Wikipedia article about sodium hyaluronate. Awesome. Then if I press Alt-D, what happens? Look at the knowledge tree. Now I have a child and it modifies the name. So the copy doesn't have the same name. It has duplicate colon space added in the name. And do you see that, hey, it looks the same? Exactly, that's the purpose, right? The only thing that doesn't copy, doesn't duplicate, is the history. So that is the original one. Do you see it was May 8th? And it was forgotten in June 24th. And the new one, there's nothing. Absolutely empty. The repetition history is empty. Another thing is look at the topic number. The element number is different. 418,637. But the original is indeed something else. 262,103. Okay. So far we know that what's different is the element number because it needs to be unique. Second, the title gets duplicate appended, so you know that it's actually a duplicate more explicitly. The repetition data, it's new, it doesn't carry over. And what else? The priority. Because you know that the priority cannot be exactly the same, it's a queue. So if it is the position 7,378, should be the 79, the next one, but not the same one. Or in this case, it's the prior one. So sometimes it's above or below, before or after in the queue, but it's always a neighbor in the queue, because they cannot coexist in the same position. Each element has its own position. So that's how you duplicate elements, just as easy as that. Control D, and to make my point, do you see? You can duplicate a duplicated one. And interestingly enough, the name doesn't add up. So you don't have duplicate colon sodium hyaluronate. Do you see? But now, if I change the title manually, and I duplicate again, it restores. It is there. Meaning that if duplicate colon, the convention, built-in convention, is present, it doesn't repeat that. Awesome. Then another detail is that it becomes a child. Now, I will continue to do that with one item. Okay. This is a very dummy flashcard. This is an awesome idea I just got. Okay. Then if I duplicate this, Alt-D, now you may have noticed that the components are selected. It's the same as if I pressed Ctrl-E. Okay. And I have the same. Duplicate colon, But it's not selected. To select that, I need to go to the knowledge tree or Alt left. And that is the copy. Now do you see it's 0% is a position number 6, and the original is number 5. So in this case, the priority is a neighbor next, not the prior one. So we actually achieve one of those cases. And, whoopsie-doopsie, what happened here? Let's go into the original. There's some first repetition, July 19th, and another scheduled, and the 19th. Okay. I did the copy, I duplicated, and the duplicate has history. That is a difference. That is the main difference against topics, because the topics doesn't have any history. Here it does. Why? Because an item needs to be scheduled. In SuperMemo, every single item starts with an interval. It's memorized. In the mastery track, we will see outlier cases that, hey, what happens is if I duplicate a pending or a dismissed element? But those are outliers. You don't need to know that as a fluent SuperMemo user, because in case you use duplicate, it will be for convenience. For instance, if it's an item, perhaps you want to swap something we see in this very same. So we'll see in the mastery the use cases. Just very briefly, for items, perhaps you want to swap question and answer and have the other way around. In Anki, we'll have most people have that they have the reverse. So in here you can use a duplicate to have the reverse flashcard. So you just duplicate, go to the copy, set reverse, and that's it. And sometimes for topics it's more nuanced, but again, we're not going to cover here this in the Fluency. So this is everything you need to know for the Fluency track about duplicating elements. When you duplicate elements, you duplicate all of the components. That's why if I duplicate this, my root element that has 4 components, it will have 4 components as well. But then something happens that we will see in the mastery that is dismissed, but the duplicate is actually pending. And some weird stuff happens that, hey, this concept will have been created in the concept registry, and if it's a task, it goes to a task list and all of those. But this is only for the mastery track. See you incrementally.